This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we're fortunate to have a distinguished guest. Her name is Anjali Bhardwaj. She is an Indian social activist and a champion of anti-corruption. She has been engaged in India's right to information movement for over 2 decades. Her activism helped drive the Right to Information Act of 2005 in India. Thank you for coming to our show and welcome to our show. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Please tell our global audience a little bit about yourself and who you are, and please shed some bright lights on your organization, SNS, what that stands for, and that organization promote transparency and accountability and encourage active participation of citizens.
Thank you, Frank. I work in India and I have been part of the right to information movement in the country for nearly 2 decades now. And my work focuses on seeking transparency and accountability from the state. And I've been associated with several legislations, the demand for them and advocacy related to anti-corruption and grievance redress. So we've been working, I'm part of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information in India, and also one of the founders of Satark Nagrik Sangathan, which basically means a Vigilant Citizens Collective, which was set up in 2003.
Wow. And thank you. President Kennedy once said, a nation reveals itself when it recognizes and rewards its talents. And I want to talk a little bit about the award you just received from the U.S. State Department called the International Anti-Corruption Champions Award. Do you believe that the award means that Washington is committed to promote accountability for corrupt individuals and fight for corruption and strengthen citizens' engagement?
The award
committed to do that?
So the award, Frank, has been given from the citation that I have received for my work on promoting transparency and accountability and against the fight against corruption. So these are shared global values across democracies. And I think the fact that this award has been given out by the US state administration really sort of shows that they are looking to stand with people, with communities that are seeking transparency, accountability, and working towards deepening democracy.
So do you believe that the corruption is a part of the DNA of India?
Well, in India, we do have rampant corruption, which does exist in many countries across the world. One unique feature of corruption in India is that it isn't limited to the highest echelons of power. It goes down to the lowest levels, and it impacts citizens when they're trying to access even their basic rights and entitlements. So it is a huge problem, and there have been very many efforts to try and address the problem of corruption in our country. One of the most powerful tools that people have found to empower them to fight against corruption is information. And that is why one of the reasons that people have sought, and especially those who have fought corruption in our country, have asked for greater transparency in the system.
How do you sustain your organization
well,
in terms of financial support?
We are supported by many like-minded individuals. We have been through the last 2 decades. There are also some organizations that have supported us in our endeavors, but mostly the work that is done by our organization is done on a small budget, which has been supported by like-minded individuals who've been committed to fighting corruption.
Now, tell us about our audience. So you have a fairly large audience, not only in India and United States, but in Gulf countries as well, and the people are fairly well off. How do they go about reaching out to you to do what you're doing and also support financially?
Well, a lot of our work is actually done by volunteers who don't really charge very much money for the work that they do with us. We have many student volunteers in Delhi and across the country. So certainly a lot of our work which gets done online, the research that can be supported even by giving some time, and which is really our most preferred way of involving and engaging people. Unfortunately, we do not have an FCRA, which is necessary in India for organizations to access foreign funds. So we don't take any foreign funds for the activities that we undertake, and we are, but however, very happy to engage with people globally on these issues, to learn and also to work with them to ensure that there is greater transparency.
Well, thank you very much. And you're extending your hope, your hand, and your heart to those people, just not giving the financial aspect of the support, but also give their time and talent, just like what you said. Tell me a little bit about this award that you received. Was it received well in India? Was it positive or negative? And do you think this award inspire you to do what it takes to pursue your ideas and ideals?
Well, I think the award has been received very well in India, especially by civil society and the media. We see it, I certainly see it, as a recognition of the collective struggles of many, many people and groups across the country, which have worked very hard through the decades to ensure that we have a strong transparency law, and that there are accountability mechanisms that are put in place in the country, and to fight against corruption and corrupt forces. So this is, in a country as vast as India, no one person can claim to fight corruption alone. And so it is very much a collective effort. And I see this as a recognition of that effort. And therefore, it is very heartening and very positive. And certainly, a show of solidarity globally, which I think is very encouraging, especially in these times in India, when we are seeing that dissent and questioning are not particularly encouraged.
That's a very well said. As I understand your movement, when I did some research, my staff did, as a matter of fact, research. It began 20 years ago. Was it a grassroots movement, and do you think it's a game changer for transparency and civic empowerment?
Well, the Right to Information law was passed in India in 2005 at a national level. It really came as a result of a strong...
national level means the federal level.
Yes, that's
right.
State level. That's right. There were 9 states that had passed right to information laws in the country before it was passed at the federal national level. It is applicable to all arms of the state, the executive, judiciary, and the legislature. And the law really came about as a result of a strong people's movement. And this movement did not involve just the academia or lawyers or journalists. It actually involved and was led by, in many ways, people who live in villages, people who live in slum settlements, the poor and the marginalized in the country, who realized that unless they have information, they are unable to access their basic rights and entitlements. So it was a very vibrant movement, which finally led to the passage of the law at a national level, which is applicable across the country now. And it has been used very, very vibrantly as well. So in India, we have about 60 lakh or 6 million RTI applications filed every single year. I
What's the
think it's
RTI stands
this is
for
the
in that?
right to information
Okay.
law. So applications are filed under the RTI law, and about 6 million RTI applications are filed every year in India. And our research has shown that these are not just filed by lawyers or by journalists, like is used in many countries, but they are actually filed by ordinary citizens who are looking to hold the government accountable for delivery of basic rights and entitlements also. Of course, the law is also has been used very extensively to shine the light on big ticket corruption. So people have exposed big ticket scams using the right to information law in India as well. But it's been a very, very vibrant demand and now a very vibrant use of the right to information law.
Do you believe that the corruption is on the top of the Modi government? Obviously, I've known Modi for many, many years. I met him several times when I visited India with President Obama, and I think he's a decent man. The question is, I believe that he is not involved in corruption, but the people underneath him are subscribed to the notion of the corruption, and they are corrupt people, or they're not as corrupt as the previous government were. What your thoughts are?
Well, like I mentioned, Frank, that in India, corruption, unfortunately, seeps down to the lowest level.
Very well said.
And for a lot of people in the country, it's a lived experience because it isn't just limited to any one echelon. Okay. So unfortunately, it's not as if one can say that, corruption has gone away in our country, or, for people it has reduced, their experience with it. What we are seeing is that the Modi government had come to power on the plank of anti-corruption in 2014. And therefore, there was a great deal of hope that institutions and laws that would help people fight corruption would be strengthened. Unfortunately, we haven't quite seen that in the last 7 years. And that is, I say it's unfortunate because this was a huge opportunity, a lot of us felt. The right to information law has really empowered citizens in the country to fight corruption. And there was hope that when the BJP forms the government at the center, they will strengthen the law. But unfortunately, we saw that in 2019, for the first time in the 15 years of its existence, the right to information law was actually diluted. Amendments were brought to the law, and the institution of information commissions, which is supposed to ensure that people get information from the government, was actually weakened because the autonomy of information commissions was compromised. Information commissioners have the power to penalize officials if they don't give information, if they withhold information, and therefore have to work very independently of the government, which is why in the original right to information law that the country had, the salaries, the tenures, the post-retirement benefits were all decided in the law. But in 2019, the BJP government brought amendments to the right to information law, wherein the central government empowered itself with the ability to decide the tenure and salaries and pensions and post-retirement benefits of information commissioners, which means that they would worry before and think many times before they gave an order to the government to disclose information that the government found inconvenient to disclose, that would perhaps show wrongdoing or corruption or abuse of power. So this has been a huge setback. Similarly, other anti-corruption laws like the Lokpal law, which was based. It's called the Lokpal law, which is basically meant to set up an anti-corruption ombudsman in the country, which was empowered and independent. And one of the things that really helped the BJP also to come to power was the support to the Lokpal law. And unfortunately, for 5 years after the law was passed and the BJP came to power, no Lokpal was appointed in the country.
Okay.
And so we have seen institutions suffer, which would have actually helped people fight corruption. And the whistleblowers protection law has not been operationalized by the government, despite it being passed 7 years ago. This law was supposed to protect people who show truth to power.
Very well said.
It was supposed to help people expose corruption and wrongdoing. And that law, the government has refused to formulate rules to operationalize the law. So as a result, we have people who are constantly threatened, attacked, and even killed for exposing corruption in the country. In India, more than 80 people have been killed since the Right to Information law was passed for simply asking for information and filing a complaint on the basis of the information that they obtain against corruption. And they
Does India have a whistle blower, what I consider the protection, just like we have in the United States? We didn't do very well during the Trump administration. We're trying to get back to the Congress is very hard working to make sure that they are protected. So is there the same kind of a law in India as well?
Well, we do have a whistleblowers protection law, which also came after a long struggle, which involved right to information users and activists, because there was a clear recognition that whistleblowers need protection. And the law is a very strong one, which provides anonymity to those who blow the whistle on corruption and wrongdoing. And it also gives protection to them. But the law was passed in February 2014 by the parliament in India. It hasn't been operationalized till date. So it is simply a statute on paper, and nobody is able to make use of it.
Well, thank you very much. I want to talk to you about two items. Obviously, we live in difficult and challenging and troubling times, not only in the United States, but India as well, and especially because of COVID-19 pandemic. How do you mobilize people, and what do you do during this pandemic? Were you able to get things done during this COVID-19 pandemic situation?
Well, yes, Frank. In fact, we found ourselves working quite actively throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, including the lockdown that was imposed in India. Unfortunately, the national lockdown was a very strict and a very hard one, and it came at a very short notice. And given that 90% of India's workforce is in the unorganized sector, it really hit people living in poverty and living at the margins very, very hard, because these people are usually daily wagers. They earn every day to be able to put food on their children's plates. So when the lockdown was announced, suddenly people realized that they would have no money to be able to sustain themselves, because typically people who are living at the margins, living in poverty, do not have large savings, and therefore they found that food security became a huge issue. People were grappling with hunger. We had a situation where people didn't have wages and therefore no money to pay for their rent and were rendered homeless. So it was a very, very dire situation for a lot of people, and which also led to a lot of destitution amongst people. And we had many, many thousands of people walking back to their homes, migrant workers. In that situation, we mobilized whatever resources that could be mobilized to ensure that people received food. We also worked closely with governments to advocate for the right kind of social security and food security packages. And the Delhi Rozi Roti Adhikar Abhiyan, which is the Right to Food campaign, which I'm involved with, did approach the courts and ensure that in Delhi, about 5 million people who needed food received it, so that they did not have to go hungry. So people also were involved in monitoring the distribution of subsidized food grains. So there were a lot of things that were going on, including asking for information about health facilities, about various other facilities that were supposed to be provided to people.
Well, and the most important thing, the vaccine. So do you believe the hope is on the horizon?
Well, we are always hopeful, and and certainly one hopes that the pandemic is going to subside. It's the lockdown, which was imposed to fight the pandemic, also caused a great deal of havoc. Because the profile of the population of the country. So one hopes that the economic situation in the country improves and employment situation improves. And we really hope that governments in India, like we hope in across the world, function transparently so that people can actually understand where their money is going, where taxpayers' money is going, and make sure that it actually goes to the right place.
Very well said. Let me, before I close my conversation, I want to talk to you about what can other countries learn from your work in India in terms of creating and sustaining a culture, strong freedom of information, and also promote the government transparency and right-based agenda building?
Well, Frank, I think what has happened in India is on transparency and the right to information has been very, very inspiring. We've had, like I told you, a very strong movement for transparency and for the right to information law. The use of the law in India has not been limited to those doing investigative journalism. There are people who have understood the power of information. I'll give you a small anecdote. When the law came in, we went to the slum settlements in Delhi and we told people there's this fantastic law and you must use it. And one woman stood up in the slum and she said, well, I don't even get my rations. What am I going to do with information? And we realized people are not interested in information for the sake of information. They want it if it helps them to access their rights and entitlements, which they don't get because of corruption and wrongdoing. And that is what the connection between the right to information and other rights that has got established in India. And I think that a lot of countries, especially other developing countries, have expressed time and again the fact that this is something that would be valuable, which needs to sort of, be something that we see across the globe, because the right to information in India has really shown how empowering it is. And it has really decentralized the fight against corruption. Typically, we see anti-corruption as an activity which is taken care of by anti-corruption institutions and bodies. In India, because of the active and extensive and vibrant use of the right to information law, it is something that has got decentralized, that every citizen is empowered to fight against corruption. Every citizen in India has potentially become a whistleblower. So we say that we have suddenly become a country of 1.4 billion whistleblowers because we can access information which used to be earlier only with the government. So I think that it's something that we hope also inspires other countries as well.
Well, thank you very much, Anjali, for all you're doing. You are making a difference. And we deeply appreciate your time here, and thank you for coming to our show. And also what you're doing, you're making a difference to the people's lives. And that is a profound statement that President Kennedy said many times. You're fulfilling your responsibility as a global citizen of India. And that's that's admirable, and we deeply appreciate what you're doing. So this is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.